Fundamental truths. They are the entire basis of what people believe in. All of someone's beliefs can be taken down and brought into their most fundamental values, as well as their entire belief system and value system being based on that one or couple fundamental truths. These values of what each person holds so dear differ based on experience, genetics, parents/family life, economic status, and so much more. Of course, this is just on average. There are exceptions to every rule. That is one of my fundamental truths. But how a person got to their truth in the first place often comes from something like I just described. It is because of these truths it is so hard to convince others to change their mind on certain issues, because our fundamental truths contradict each other. And to get to those truths and find out what someone's is, you first have to go through a sea of debate and argument to just get to the point where they won't change their minds. I don't blame them. It's so hard to wrap your mind around the fact that the truth that you base your entire belief system on is wrong, and how shattering that is. It makes sense why people are so stubborn on these issues, because they've gone off these basic values their entire lives, intentionally or not. And changing it now could damage friendships, relationships, and maybe even family. Of course, this goes for all truths. But changing a fundamental truth, as you expect, fundamentally changes a person, whether for better or for worse. It is a pillar of their entire being. Here, let me give you an example. I was debating abortion with one of my friends, and we sat there civilly debating about the issue, and after talking about the topic, going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, trying to convince him of the pro-life argument, I think we sat there for like 45 minutes trying to convince him. And when we finally got to the point where I said something around the lines of, I would rather be born in terrible circumstances than not to be born at all, as I would have a chance to get out of these terrible circumstances. Where, in response, he said, I would rather not be born at all than to be born into terrible circumstances. And from there, his view on the issue finally made sense, and how all of his arguments on that issue came from that fundamental truth. I realized his fundamental truth differed from mine. It finally made sense why he viewed the way he did on this issue and how it was different from mine. For some context about this friend of mine, he didn't grow up in a particularly good family life. His parents got divorced when he was young and he didn't have much money. But it's because of his life experience and probably lots of other things that I don't know about him that led him to this conclusion, this fundamental truth. And of course, I differed a lot from him. We have very different backgrounds, but we're still friends to this day. Even though me and him disagree on certain things, he's still fun to be around. I guess another one of my fundamental truths is, even if you disagree with someone, even if it's on pretty fundamental stuff, still be around them if they're a good person. Anyway, it makes sense why we would have naturally different views on things. But my point here being is, because we had different fundamental truths, our values and our opinions differed. And at that moment, I realized the importance of the fundamental truth. And then I thought to myself, that would be a great idea for a video. Hello, I am the Right-Wing Lutheran, and welcome to, hopefully, one of my first of many videos. Today we will be talking about the fundamental truth and how it impacts people. As I explained in my intro, fundamental truths are things each and every human hold. They are the basis of entire belief systems, both political and religious, and even down to every interaction you could have with another human being. Every single time you talk to someone, in one way or another, your fundamental truth is reflected. Because it sets the basis of everything you believe, even when it comes down to the most minute details in a conversation. An example of this would be where, if I were to bump into someone on the street, I'm going to say, oh, sorry, or something like that. It's that knee-jerk reaction. To say that is based on the fundamental truth, that it's bad to hurt other people for no reason. Because of this fundamental truth, you feel bad about hurting another human being, even if the damage was minuscule, and they know that you didn't mean it. You still feel sorry, unless, you're a psychopath who literally can't fathom the fundamental truth of sympathy. But that's for another time. A huge chunk of these truths are something we just have biologically and genetically, that we discover over time when we're young. Hurting another human being, not intentionally, is just one of them. Because when other people hurt us for no reason, we feel bad. This is the fundamental truth that starts biologically, then goes on to become the golden rule, which I'm guessing you already know. Treat others as you would want to be treated. Something around those lines. Not only is this just a fundamental value of Christian and both human ethics, it's something that we discover when we are young. You see, when we are young, we are the most susceptible to these fundamental truths. I mean, it makes sense. It's the only truth you know. And so from there, the rest of your beliefs are built upon it. But depending on who you're around and your situation, your fundamental truths can be insanely different from anyone else your age. Little kids are so impressionable because they know nothing else. Like, literally nothing. That's why you can tell a small child anything and they'll believe you. You can tell them that bears used to rule the world until humans revolted it and took it back over, and they would 100% believe you, especially if they're your parents, because their parents explain everything else to them. Why would they be wrong? Why would they lie? You see, when I was little, I thought my dad was like this all-knowing being, because whenever I asked something, he'd just tell me it, and I just took it at face value because it would be true. Or at least to my little kid brain, I thought he was always right. This is why informing the youth on the actual truth is so important, because if you don't, you end up with a situation of kids being born into cults and believing some pretty insane things. Usually they find, the truth, but it's like 70 out of 30% chance. But anyway, my point here being is that I can literally not stress enough that the things you were told when you were young literally will define the belief system for the rest of your life. This brings me to my next point. As the word implies, the fundamental truth that is the basis of Christianity, and I would go as far to say as our religions, is to be a religious person in the first place, you must accept the fundamental truth that there is a God, or higher being, that created humans, that there is life after death, and there's the existence of good and evil. These are all truths that you need to have if you want to be a religious person. And of course, there's differences between religions, like, for Christianity, it's, Jesus Christ exists and all the miracles that he did were true. And, the stuff that Christianity, was branched off of, Judaism. Judaism today believes, that wasn't actually Jesus Christ. It was not, he was false. And then Islam's like, he was a prophet, but he wasn't the son of God. And that's just like the religions that came out of Judaism. Even other religions that didn't come from Judaism still believe, in Buddhism, it's like, Jesus Christ, he achieved some sort of higher spiritual power. My point here being is that even though they differ on specifics, they all believe that the fundamental truth of God exists and that there's life after death. Because of this, you see similarities among all religions. Anyway, I hope by this point you understand what a fundamental truth means.
I guess the whole reason I'm making this video on fundamental truths is just I want people to know how and why people have different opinions. For the longest time, I just thought, people were stupid. Oh my God, you don't think the same way I do? The hell? You idiot? But no, it's way, way more different than that. They have an entire life of experiences and friends, family, economic status, even genetics. And here's the reality of it. It helps to understand people. It helps to see that the person you're talking to is not just stupid, or that they're not evil. They just started with a different truth. And if we don't recognize that, we're always going to be talking past each other and not to each other. And of course, at times, there's a difference between me actually wanting to convince someone, or maybe someone's too far gone to the point where I'm making fun of them, and in turn I'm, preaching to the choir, just restating my point. It doesn't change their mind. It changes another person's mind. If I make fun of the way someone thinks, it's not because I'm trying to actually convince them. It's trying to convince another person or another group of people that are there, poking fun at my opponent. But you should really only do those when your opponent's too far gone and you can't actually convince them, which, I believe you can convince a lot of people of a lot of things, but, given with enough time and reason, and you can convince literally anyone of anything. But that I was talking about that earlier. I think I've discussed every point there except genetics, because I've talked about the rest of them, and the more nurture side of it, not nature side of it. The nature side of it being, your genetics also affect your fundamental truth. If I'm not tall and I'm really short, I'll never play basketball, and I'll never have that life experience. Or maybe I can. I'll get my butt whipped, and then that'll be one of my experiences. That might be one of the reasons I don't like basketball, because I'm short. and I'm bad at it. That's just a very, very mild example. Um, Genetics, affects so much, so much. In fact, I'm gonna do a completely different video on genetics. But the basketball example is YouTube friendly. I'll use that one. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, this is the whole reason political debates never seem to go anywhere. You could throw facts, statistics, logic at them all day, but if these facts challenge their beliefs, their fundamental truth, they won't care. This is how you get all the opinions of the world. You'll have the people that are like, oh my God, it's systemic injustice. Versus the people who actually value freedom and value safety. They're not just preferences. These are deep-rooted truths in each and every one of us. And it's how people believe the world works or how it should work. Let me give you another example. If I'm debating someone, I say something obvious, such as, you can't change your own gender. See, to me, that is a fundamental truth based in biology and tradition. On the other side, someone might say, I feel who I am. And that's their truth, rooted in their individual experience and emotional reality. Then again, emotional reality, mental illness, it kind of overlaps. But anyway, that's a topic for another video. Yeah, I'm coming up with so many good ideas. I gotta start writing things down. Even though each side thinks they're right, it's because they're talking about each other's fundamental truths, and thus they'll never agree on it. Even if one side's so grounded in reality, the other side's reality might be God knows where. But once again, that's their fundamental truth. It's also why I value Christianity so deeply. It's not just a religion, it's a framework of truth that tells me what's real, what's good, and what's worth living for and what's worth dying for. Without that truth, everything else would be unstable. And, I think deep down, everyone is searching for some sort of truth, whether it be supernatural or not. Anyway, this video has also given me lots of other video ideas. I'd like to see what you guys want me to do next. Yeah, this has been my video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe. Starting this thing off, I want feedback. I want more people to, watch my stuff. So that would be greatly appreciated. Anyway, thank you for watching.